Episode 72 of Red versus Blue. My name is Mike Stark.
And I'm Keith Curry.
And we're back after a short break. But as always, a lot has gone on since then. But let's start with the Super Bowl. First of all, what a horrible game, right?
It was a bad game. Let's just say that. But here's the thing. The halftime shows were more competitive than the ball game.
They tend to be these days, don't they?
They are. So we had, Bad Bunny, and you were just down in Puerto Rico, and I think now most of America knows that Puerto Rico is in fact part of America. It was a highly produced show with Lady Gaga and Ricky Martin, who I actually thought were better than Bad Bunny, but it was quite the production. And a big Southern California connection, Mike. You know, the couple that got married were from SoCal. The groom went to Cal State Fullerton. The young boy that got the Grammy, he was from Costa Mesa. And an LA taco stand featured prominently in the show. Right. So a big shout out to SoCal for the halftime show. You know, it was a major production and a major statement by Bad Bunny on behalf of the Americas and the people of Puerto Rico, who are in fact Americans. For those who weren't sure about that before.
Yeah, if anything, there were a lot of people and a lot of pundits on Fox News, I might add, that didn't realize Puerto Rico is part of the United States.
Well, you're cheating if you're using Fox News as a standard, but you're right.
But it made some awareness to that fact.
It did. Now, there was counter-programming. There was the Kid Rock show, which apparently was done at a pre-recorded soundstage in Atlanta with a paid audience. He lip-synced his major song. He did a religious song. Well, I don't know. I think it was sort of a misguided intent. You can't have Kid Rock, who's sung songs about underage girls, on the Trinity Broadcasting System network, trying to look like a faithful religious singer. So I'm not sure whether it accomplished any goal that it had or not, other than to be a counter-programming to Bad Bunny.
But you did see what they did. They rebranded him mid-show.
Yeah.
Did you notice that?
Well, and it helped him. I'll just say that.
Kid Rock did his whatever that was. Which was his first hit years and years ago, by the way, for those that are keeping track. And then they faded to black and brought it back up, and then they reintroduced him as Robert Ritchie.
Well, it worked for John Cougar Mellencamp. I think it worked for Eminem. I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Okay, so what is the outlay of all of this?
Well, the outlay of all of this is it emphasized what a divided nation we are, and rather than using the game to bring America together like you normally could do in a normal political environment, it amplified the divisions in America. Yeah. That was unfortunate, and the political commentary around it was unfortunate. The sort of needless battles and dividing Americans about which show do you watch was, I think, unfortunate too. As
Jon Stewart pointed out, when did the halftime show entertainer become the guy that has to unite the nation? Doesn't that job belong to someone else?
Well, it does, and we all know who he is. And in his own greatness, he chose not to rise to the occasion, on at least as far as the Super Bowl is concerned.
Okay, let's move the Super Bowl aside and move on to the other circus, the Epstein files, or as Jimmy Kimmel just relabeled them, because Trump wants his name on everything, the Trump Epstein files.
Well, in fact, his name are on 5,500 of them and counting as we release the Epstein files. They tried everything from the Guthrie kidnapping to the threatened invasion of Greenland to potential war with Iraq to keep the Epstein files off the front page. But once you drop some more files, here they are right back again. It's a story that's going to continue. And now, Mike, what we're seeing is that there are real consequences. The chief counsel at Goldman Sachs was resigned today. The British Labour Party is in turmoil. It nearly brought down the prime minister in England. He has enough of a majority that he probably will stay, but serious political problems there. Prince Andrew has been relegated, I think, to a washroom someplace in North England. Howard Lutnick, the cabinet secretary, initially denied visiting with. He was next door neighbors to Epstein and had been there, and then said, I never went and saw him again, never talked to him again, except for the time that my wife arranged for us to stop on his island with our boat and our kids. I mean, imagine bringing your kids to Epstein Island. And we stopped for lunch. And it was, oops, I forgot about that one kind of thing. But RFK Jr. is in there. Steve Bannon is in there. The head of the LA Olympics is in there. And it's having real consequences now on careers and people. And as more comes out, I never thought, Mike, that we'd find anything in it about Trump's personal involvement. But the more we see, the more he is on the tangential edges of a lot of this. And if not a participant, certainly aware of what was going on there. There's a new release that says he apparently called the Palm Beach police and said, everybody knows this guy's a pervert. So he's everybody. More is going to come out until you get it all out. Every day will be a new revelation. The New York Times had an article today about how many people they've assigned to go through this using AI and word search to find all of these. I cited 5,800 references to Trump, probably more than anybody else not working for or associated with Trump, like his assistant or Challanges. But all of it just keeps coming. And as people pour through it, it's going to be continuing to be embarrassing.
Yeah, and then, of course, tied to this is the recent hearings that brought Pam Bondi to the Congress. And that circus, which entertainment value-wise was absolute gold, I thought.
I watched the hearing, Mike, and I'll tell you this. When I was in Washington, I would sometimes be involved in prepping the administrator and go with him to Congress to testify. Back in those days, Congress would send you the questions 24 hours in advance, so you had a little bit of prep. The notebook you had were answers to the questions they sent you, not a burn book of how you can insult the guy asking the questions.
Right.
The congressman asked questions related to the department and how it worked. You answered those questions. And I will tell you this, back in the Reagan administration days, if a cabinet secretary had responded the way Pam Bondi had responded to the members of Congress here, she'd be fired before she got in the car and got back to her department. And the reason is because they would not allow you to continue. They would cut your appropriations. They would write report language that slashes your staff. They would hold up confirmations in the department. There would be a common sense in Washington that you needed to go. And if you'd pulled this kind of stuff in that administration, you would have been gone quickly. But apparently standards have changed. So it was a bad week for her. Later revealed that she's spying on, the Congress is now able to go in and read, or at least some of the members of Congress, and read the redacted Epstein files. And they're keeping track of the files that they read.
Right.
And she had, while she was sitting there, a list of all the files that Congresswoman Jerapalt had read. Even Mike Johnson was forced to come out and say that that's out of bounds.
Okay, a little cultural trivia for you here. Where does the term burn book come from?
Isn't it? Was it in a movie, or it was either in a movie or real life?
You're getting close.
Was Matt Damon in that movie?
Yeah, it was from Mean Girls, I am told.
Oh, Mean Girls. Okay, well, there you go. We all learned something on this show.
Appropriate in this case as well, I think.
Well, absolutely. And the other mean girl in the administration, she had a bad week too. Kristi Noem was subject to a very unflattering profile in the Wall Street Journal. Apparently, they had a mechanical issue on an airplane, so she had to change planes. The Coast Guard pilot failed to bring her blanket to the new plane, and he was fired. He was subsequently rehired because they had no other pilot to pilot the plane back to Washington. I mean, somebody called her the micro without the management when it comes to how she does business. The story in the Journal outlines her very open affair with Corey Lewandowski. They're both married to other people, but apparently cohabitating in the Admiral's house on the Coast Guard base in Washington. She, again, is engaged in a lot of back and forth with other members of the administration to see who's going to survive between her and Pam Bondi with their allies and their opponents. And it's a very sordid tale all the way around. And it makes you wonder how anything relative to either national security or administration of justice is getting done in this country.
I have a question for you. Is Pam Bondi on her way to become the John Mitchell of the Trump administration?
As soon as it becomes evident to Donald Trump that somebody needs to be the fall person, I think she's first in the queue. And there's a lot to work with there. People don't realize is that when the Democrats take over, it's going to be wall-to-wall hearings. And the episode that we saw recently is going to play out much more frequently with much different rules. It's going to reflect very poorly on people in the administration. And Trump is nothing if not a guy who'll cut somebody loose if he thinks they're going to be damage to him.
Right. Of course, then we're not going to break that cycle of we'll get you guys when we're in power. It's going to continue.
It will continue at least another until the end of the term, this presidential term.
Okay. The main part of our show today, and I'm going to let Keith go off about this, is here we are. We're sitting on the edge of the midterms, and it's going to be an exciting time in more ways than one. And we're going to talk about the opportunities and the challenges of the Democratic Party in making sure they get this midterm wrapped up.
Well, Mike, the oldest adage in politics is that you can't beat somebody with nobody. And the Democrats seem to be trying very hard to be nobody. Now, they come with some advantages. The generic ballot for Congress right now is Democrats 47.5%, Republicans 42.5%. That's a very, very important 5 points. On the right track, wrong track. 37.4% of Americans think we're on the right track. 57.1% of Americans believe that we are on the wrong track. That is a huge indicator and a huge opportunity indicator for the Democrats. And when we last spoke, I think we had 25 Republicans who were not running for re-election. That number's grown to 30. So everything looks good for the Democrats from that perspective. But there is trouble. 71% of Democrats believe the Democrats, have been ineffective in Congress. And 78% of all voters believe that they have been ineffective. And I see you are part of that majority. And so the split in the Democrats is not really between far left and left. It's between those who want strong in-your-face opposition and those who want a more cautious moderation. And therein is the challenge to the Democrats in motivating their base and getting them out to vote, and in picking candidates who can appeal to independents in the middle. Right. And those objectives are at somewhat cross purposes with each other, as we were seeing. Now, the Republicans have a $100 million cash advantage going into March, which is a lot of money. The Democrats have some wood to chop to take advantage of their polling advantages. There are some self-inflicted issues. Ken Martin, the Democratic National Committee chair, has come about strong resistance to staff coming back to the office. They're all working remotely, and he ordered them back in, as most every business in America has done. I have a friend who's written a book about this. And their union, they have a union, are opposed to them coming back into the office. And he calls it like drinking from a fire hose, and he may quit. Now, if you're the chairman of the Democratic Committee and you're on the verge of a monumental midterm victory and you want to quit because you can't deal with staff issues and the union of representing the staff, that's a problem.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just bad. There are some other issues. Bernie Sanders endorsed Annalena Mehta, beat former Congresswoman Malandowski in New Jersey to take the seat of the woman elected governor. This used to be a Republican area, but now they have a Bernie Sanders Democrat there. There are districts where that kind of Democrat's going to win. New York City was one. New York City has 80% Democrats, and Mondami got 51% of the vote. So you can win in those seats, but you can't win statewide, and you can't win in a lot of the swing districts. Texas is a good example. Texas provides an opportunity for the Democrats to win the Senate seat if Ken Paxton beats John Cronin in the Republican primary. And right now, Paxton has a couple of point lead. There's a third candidate, so that race will probably, nobody will get 50%. That race will probably go to a runoff, and in a runoff, you have fewer votes. When you have fewer votes, they tend to be more hardcore, either left or right. So there's a very good chance Ken Paxton, who has been indicted, who has been impeached, and who is currently in divorce for what his wife calls biblical grounds in Baptist, Texas, could be the nominee. And he could be beaten, except that the Democrats seem to be leading to nominate Jasmine Crockett, congressman from Houston. Everybody who's a Democrat loves Jasmine because she's pithy on CNN with her rebukes of Marjorie Taylor Greene and the Republicans, but she cannot win statewide in Texas.
Right.
So the issue there is, are voters going to vote tactically or are they going to vote emotionally? In Maine, we have a similar issue. Graham Planter, who is a Bernie Sanders Democrat, he's the former military guy with Nazi tattoos he's since had modified, could not explain the meaning of IA in the term LGBTQIA+. And therefore, he is now considered to be in political difficulty because that apparently is an issue important to the activist in Maine. And so that our listeners do not have to list it up, it is intersex and asexual is what the I and the A are. Now, he's running against the governor who's 78 years old. So in a party that's yearning for younger leadership, the most viable candidate against the Republican that they have to beat if they're going to take the Senate is a 78-year-old woman. So they've got some problems there. Maine is absolutely key to taking the Senate. Susan Del Bene, the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee chairman, says our issues are health care, groceries, housing, energy. They're all going up. And if you stop right there, that's probably a winning hand for the Democrats. But of course, they don't stop right there. So the Democrats have really got to hone their message and talk to real people where they really live and get off of some of the, whether you can fill out LGBTQIA plus and know all the meaning of the words, and find a candidate who speaks to people and real issues that they care about. That's the real thing.
Well, I think all we hear about, because we like crazy when it comes to television, we like crazy senators, we like crazy federal officials, we like crazy this and that. But when you get down to the congressional level in a small area of any given state, is there a way that crazy maybe doesn't play a factor because they're real people running against each other to some degree, and that would make the difference? Do you understand what I'm getting at?
No, I do, and it is. I mean, that only carries you so far. People want their congressman to be focused on them. They want them to bring home the bacon. Right. Republicans who've run against earmarks, I've always said that's a bad policy because people want earmarks. They expect you to do your job. In poll after poll, everybody says, I don't like Congress, but I like my congressman. That's because my congressman delivers for me. Now, that's true of most of the congressmen who work on district issues and constituent issues and take care of their districts. The show horses, the Matt Gaetzes of the world, right, the Marjorie Taylor Greens, the others who don't do that, they have issues. And a good, effective primary challenge can knock them off. And so you see this now going on in Marjorie Taylor Greene's district in Georgia. There's like 17 candidates. One of them got endorsed by Trump the other day, who's sort of a nobody. But the rest of them are saying, hey, I'm just as conservative as that guy is, but I'm focused on, taking care of Georgia agriculture. And I think at the end of the day, it's in districts like that one, those issues are going to win. If you're in, New York City or you're in, central Los Angeles or someplace, right, you can run to the left, or you're in some deep red Texas, you can run to the right, and you're not going to lose. But in the majority of America, where the independent votes are going to make the difference, where it's going to make the difference in control of the House, which is currently only 3 seats, you've got to find a way to talk to people where they live and appeal to independent voters, and not be just the loudest guy on TV.
Oh, you put that very well. And I'm thinking, you go to the middle part of America and you look at a given Democratic candidate there for Congress. I don't see them really playing on the cultural issues. I would say that most of them would play on what things mean in their district, and that is not an issue, so that wouldn't even come up, right?
It shouldn't come up. It comes up because the activists sit out there and they ask them. That's what happened in the Democratic presidential campaign. Is Joaquin Castro said, I'm sure all of us are going to agree that we're not going to enforce the border. And everybody raised their hand. And from that moment forward, those candidates were, dead man walking.
Yeah, so there's a lot of gotcha going on that can really be bad.
Yeah, and smart candidates figure out how not to get caught in it.
Right, exactly. Do you see any Democrats rising above all of this?
Yeah, I saw Andy Beshear on television the other day. I thought he was actually pretty cogent and appealing. I think Josh Shapiro is carving out a space for himself nationally. They've got to run a tight gamut in terms of the Democratic primaries and the activist groups. But I think there are a couple of guys on the Democratic side, Beshear and Shapiro being most notable, who have the capacity to do it.
And could be possible contenders in the presidential election. Right,
because if somebody gets served up, a cultural warrior, or even a guy named Gavin Newsom, who's been trying to walk away from a lot of his past, I think that puts the Democrats at a real disadvantage.
What's a guy like Pete Buttigieg? What's his chances?
Well, he's, I think, campaigning for Father of the Year now that he's living up in Michigan. He's making the circuit, and he's trying to carve out some space. He's a very articulate guy. I think he's trying to move away from the far fringes of his party. He doesn't really have a base to run from. He didn't really have a base as mayor of Gary or wherever Indiana he was.
Yeah.
But he's got to find some space. And he's got to find some space by elbowing Andy Beshear and Shapiro out of it.
just like the Republicans, when it gets down to it, the Democrats will battle themselves as well.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Republicans and Democrats hate each other, but they really hate other people in the party. They're on the different sides of them on, really goofy issues.
Yeah. Well, you're living proof of how a lot of your Republican cohorts are not happy with you, right?
I've got the scars to prove it, but I'm happy to have them.
All right. Anything else we need to talk about?
The new report today says that tariffs cost the average American, they're going to increase from the $1,000 they cost the average American in 2025 to $1,300 in 2026. We saw six Republicans in the House peel off and vote with the Democrats to repeal the Canadian tariffs. They postponed the vote in the Senate. So I think you're going to see, as we've talked about before, Mike, more and more Republican defections on issues that don't make economic sense to Americans. The tariff policy does not make sense to Americans. So look forward for more of that.
And you can look forward to it right here on Red versus Blue, a show that has outlasted its own expectations. So we will be back very soon. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. But more importantly, share this with your friends. I think they'll enjoy it. It's a composite little look at what went on in politics over the past few weeks, and it gives you a good overview of what's going on. So until next time, this has been Red versus Blue.
Thanks, everybody. Stay safe.